Hi, I'm James Walker, Senior Editor at Data Center Knowledge, coming to you live at the news desk, Data Center World 2025 here in Washington, DC. I'm here now with Bill Kleyman, CEO at Apollo.us and AFCOM Data Center World Program Chair. Bill, thank you very much for joining us. I know you've been busy on and off the stage this week.
Oh my gosh, it is an absolute pleasure to be here. I was looking forward to this interview so much. I sprinted over here, wiped the sweat off after my last session, got off the keynote, and I'm like, I'm going to make sure that I look prim and proper for James as we'd have a wonderful discussion. Thank you for having me here.
It's great to see you. I was hoping we could start by reflecting on the show over the past couple of days. From my perspective, it seems that the industry is at an inflection point as it faces soaring demand, driven by AI, power constraints, and the need to scale sustainably. What's the feeling on the ground from the people you've been speaking to at the events?
I don't think I have an appropriate analogy anymore to describe exactly what's happening in this industry. It's been extraordinary. Think of it like this, right? We live in a world that's just discovered oil, but hasn't invented the internal combustion engine.
Right.
Way too much raw material, and not a lot of people know what to do with it quite yet. So everyone here is trying to figure out, well, what if I don't want to build a gas station, I want to build a refinery? Mm-hmm. And so pardon the crude analogy, you see what I did there? But the reality of the situation is that what we're learning about here right now is an imperative to embrace these new technologies. How do I become part of this AI world? Mm-hmm. The data center industry is very much used to doing things in standardized, really similar types of fashions where there's a saying, right? The data center industry loves innovation as long as it's 10 years old, mm-hmm. but we certainly don't have that much time. We blink and 10 hours goes by. Mm-hmm. So right now, the feeling on the floor, the sort of mentality, obviously AI is everywhere, but we've gone from looking to do a crystal ball to realizing that the crystal ball is here.
Right.
This is it. And the most important, I think, what people are understanding is that we've shifted away from an advancement in technology and much more so towards an advancement in humanity. How we interact with data has changed. There's no going back. And right now, those people in that expo hall and all of these sessions, they're trying to figure out, how do I support AI? Mm-hmm. How do I go from systems that can support 10, 15, 20 kW per rack, the amount of stuff you can put into a rack, to now putting in 60, 70 kW. If you saw the keynote the other day, Jensen Huang from GTC announced, the megawatt class rack, 600 kW per rack, which is just extraordinary. Now, I'm not expecting the listeners to go out there and put all that much stuff in there, but that's what's going on. That's why we have 400 exhibitors in there showcasing so many new kinds of systems, new technologies, containment, liquid cooling, power systems, software designs. Mm-hmm. The feeling right now is this is here. Mm-hmm. I don't want to miss the bus. I want to know and understand better how to support this. This isn't something that's 5 or 6 years from now. These technologies are here today. Yep. And what do I require from an underlying perspective to actually make it happen?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, AI has been a recurring topic across the conference program this week. And I think last year, Jamie Dimon, he's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, said that AI could be as transformational as the printing press and the steam engine. So do you agree with that prediction? And if so, are you optimistic that the industry will be able to evolve to satisfy the predicted surge in demand?
I absolutely believe this is going to be the case, right? On the keynote this morning, I talked about how we've got about 5 gigawatts under construction in the United States, right, for data center infrastructure and power. But folks like Boston Consulting Group and many others are now saying that there's going to be between 35 and 40 gigawatts in demand by 2030, James. We're talking like 4 or 5 years from now. That's just right across the border here. Mm-hmm. And what people are listening right now, they're like, oh, Bill, those are fun numbers. I don't know what that means. Just understand, 1 gigawatt will power a city of about 1 million people. 10 gigawatts is about New York or Los Angeles. And 100 gigawatts of power is about 10% of all the lights globally that are on at any given moment in time. So we're not talking about anything trivial here. But again, what we're trying to understand is how these technologies are going to be impacting what we do, how we live, how we work, how we play. These predictions are real. I absolutely believe that they are. And it's much aligned to the reconditioning of how we as humanity interact with data. Mm-hmm. Look, James, for 30 years, you and I and everyone watching over there, hi friends, you've been conditioned to interact with data in a certain way, right? You go to a search engine, you ask a question, and you get a blue link. Whether it's Ask Jeeves or Alta Vista or even Google, yeah, if you know what those search engines are, you're at least a millennial. Good job. But if you're looking at it as your favorite search engine, right now, if you go on Google or Bing and you ask a question, the first response isn't a blue link anymore. It's a generative AI response.
Yeah.
So everyone watching this conversation, every single user has become a user of generative AI. We have seen no other technology, no other piece of application or service that has had this kind of rapid adoption. So kudos to JP Morgan Chase for predicting something that I believe is already starting, and we've got our foot in the door and we're not exiting. There's no going back at this point.
Yeah, sure. I think during your keynote yesterday, you said that the industry was having a moment, and I certainly agree that that's true. But I'd just like to discuss that in a little bit more detail, I guess, regarding how that relates to the public perception of data centers. So I myself was on the cybersecurity beat for many years, and I recall the WannaCry ransomware outbreak in 2017, and I think that was a watershed moment in that the general public had their eyes open to the importance of cybersecurity.
Sure.
And I was just wondering if you think AI is having the same effect in terms of maybe bringing this slightly abstract concept of data centers and digital infrastructure, and how that might be bringing it to the public eye.
But perception is always going to be a challenge, right? We've had these conversations. I remember attending a data center event in Virginia, and I met my first ever protesters. They were real. They were kind of angry. They were holding up signs, and they're like, we don't want you here. And I had a chance to speak to some of them, and I'm like,
Right.
what are the concerns? And there's so much education that needs to happen. There's a lot of misconceptions around what we're doing in the industry. But I learned about NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard. And I learned a new acronym called NOTE. Not over there either, which I think is kind of silly. At that point, it's like, give me your phone, here's your notepad and a pen. Good luck to you in life.
Sure.
We have to have a balance. These physical pieces of infrastructure, they're going to exist. The big kicker here that I think is going to happen is that not everything is going to be built in, let's call them NFL or sporting cities, right? We're seeing more distribution, more things being done at the edge. You mentioned my company, Apollo. We're seeing inference at the edge being done much more robustly right now. So, but let's go back to your public perception, right? There's always going to be fear, uncertainty, and doubt, James, and everybody listening. Or whenever you apply and work with these new technologies, it's scary, right? And we as humans, we're creatures of comfort, right? We know what we enjoy, we know what we like, we know potentially what we can interact with, and all of a sudden you have this thing that can think for you, that can do all this for you, and it's a little uncomfortable. Is it going to replace me? Is it going to be doing something else? And the one major aspect, James, and everybody, when we design AI solutions, when we built this stuff to go to market, my goal isn't to replace you. It's to give you something back that's truly finite. Time.
Yeah.
That's the penultimate goal here, is to give something valuable back to someone that you can never gain back, and then you can actually do something more valuable to the business. There's going to be a period of time we're going to have to get used to this. There's going to be a period of time when we're going to be understanding the deeper, more meaningful use cases, and not just going into like, Grok, or paint me a picture of this puppy or a pug, or tell me a bedtime story with Paw Patrol and Superman, which clearly I have children, which is exactly what I asked ChatGPT to do. We're going to be asking it to do these meaningful tasks. And here's the big thing about, let's call it public perception, and learning to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. We're 12 to 24 months away from artificial general intelligence. Agent to agent communication, to be able to do human level processing, almost like a co-CEO, that's going to be extraordinarily powerful within an ecosystem for a person, and certainly within an enterprise organization. I hate to say this. I understand that there's perceptions. I understand that people could be concerned or afraid with these kinds of technologies. But just like we heard today, like we heard yesterday from Wade Vinson, you have to try it. You have to experiment and explore with these technologies, because unless you truly know what AI can do for you, you're going to be caught sort of in the backseat. And for the data center folks that are listening to this, there's one fact here. Every data center is going to become an AI data center. It completely depends on how fast that you can get there, and the technologies that you apply to make your business viable in a new AI age.
Okay, thank you. I know you've often discussed encouraging the next generation of data center talent. What would you say to someone who's considering a career in data centers, and how can we best encourage the next generation during this critical time for the industry?
What a lovely question. Data centers are so cool. Data centers are so amazing. I'm lucky, James. So I graduated with a network engineering and telecom degree, and I immediately jumped into the data center space. Now, I am a geriatric millennial. I don't know why they need to call me that. They could just call me an elder millennial. That's perfectly fine. But I've been in the industry for just north of 20 years. And just to be frank with everyone, what I've seen happen in the past 24 months has eclipsed my 2 decades in this industry.
Wow.
And you know what's really special about this space is that we're having a moment. We are being recognized. And I'll tell you a really funny story. I was speaking with a friend recently, and we went to a Starbucks, and a young man, maybe 18, 19 years old, it's like, hey, what you guys are talking about interesting. Where do you work? And I said, I work with data centers. And do you know what their response was? Oh, that's where the servers are. That's where ChatGPT lives and stuff. I'm like,
There you go.
yes!
Yeah.
First time in my career, I didn't have to explain what a data center was, what it does. Actually, somebody knew what it can create and what it does for our ability to live, play, eat, everything else. So for the young people trying to explore this space for the first time, we've got really good college programs. We have the Northern Virginia program that we're donating to right now for every single session feedback that people submit. There are now clear engineering, networking, really good hands-on program certification programs geared specifically towards this industry. And we need young people, right? This older millennial needs more young blood to hire to get into this space. And what used to be an industry of warehouses and nondescript buildings off the side of the highway that you didn't know what they were are now beautiful facilities architected in Barcelona's, like for example, the Barcelona supercomputing is an old church. There's in Sweden, for example, there's one that was built into a nuclear bunker, for example. My former employer, Switch, has a pyramid in Grand Rapids, Michigan. These facilities are extraordinary and they look really cool. And obviously what goes inside of them is critical for everyday life.
Yeah.
So I lecture at, for example, USC School of Engineering regularly, and I speak to computer, civil, mechanical, electrical engineers. And my goal is to impart on them their expertise in how what they do specifically can be directly positioned in our space, and every single time it's an eye-opening moment. So James, let me talk to the audience for just 1 second. I challenge all of you to find a young person, to find maybe a school, a high school, even like a junior high, because what we found usually when you're at the college, senior level in high school, that's already too late. They kind of know what they want to do. Inspire them to come into this industry. You can even borrow some of my energy. I'll be happy to speak to a school, university, whatever the case is. But this industry is extraordinary. We have so much capacity for growth and for career expansion that I want more young people in this space.
And lastly, Bill, I know that AFCOM doesn't stop working once Data Center World is over. What else can we expect from the organization for the remainder of 2025 and beyond?
We have an amazing event coming up at the end of September. I think it's September 29th of October 1st. You're going to have to correct me on those dates if I'm a little bit off. I think those are right. But we have data center power. Now, I joke that you need 2 things to be successful in the industry. You need power and you need bravery, right? We've certainly been discussing both of those aspects, and I think bravery is a deeply reflective thing that I think any organization and person needs to go around. But data center power is going to be a very, very big and fun event focused on what is arguably one of the largest and most challenging constraints in getting into this industry, access to power. So that's going to be a good one. Obviously, you can find all the fun publications that we do on data center knowledge. You can follow me on LinkedIn or any of your fun social media engines. But AFCOM is always doing local, regional events. Reach out to your chapters. Get involved in this conversation because, in case you haven't noticed, we're being seen. The data center industry is in the news, and I think my level of when we go mainstream is when South Park does an episode on you, which they did, and it's called Deep Learning. And oh my God, James, it's both amazing and it's kind of scary. And this is like the only time that I think I'll recommend watching a South Park episode, even though I do think it's very amusing. But that's a good one. We're mainstream. We're on all the major news channels. I've had more people approach me more recently that have no idea what I did, and now they have at least a concept. It's kind of nice to be in the limelight, but it's also an important responsibility to help people learn and grow with us in this space.
Bill, thank you for taking the time to share your perspective. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's next for you in AFCOM.
Likewise. Thank you, James.